When weighing up your health and fitness solutions, is yoga worth considering? Depending on where you are in your self-improvement journey, whether you're just getting started, even if it is for what feels like the 100th time, or you're well into your journey but you've hit a plateau, your enthusiasm's waning, or you're looking to expand your horizons. Rather than continuing to look at adapting things you already do, it may be that an alternative is out there that could make a significant impact to your progress. So, today we're reviewing the option of yoga. And by the end of this video, you should have a better understanding of what benefits yoga offers, whether those benefits apply to you, what to look for if you do decide to go down that path to get the most out of it, and I'm going to cover a few lessons and disciplines you can draw from the teachings of yoga that you can immediately benefit from without having to step foot on a yoga mat. Let's start with the basics. Before going any further, it's worth understanding what yoga is. It's likely something you've heard of, and you likely have a notional picture of people on mats making interesting shapes with their bodies. Maybe it's more a vision of stretching and mobilizing. It could be that you instinctively have visions of exercising on the beach, by the sea, on a mountain, and always with the sun shining. Perhaps you associate it more with insane levels of flexibility to the point of contortionism. And that's the kind of thing that makes you think this is not for me. The truth is, yoga is a very broad term that's evolved over the years. As such, it's come to mean different things to different people. So before deciding if yoga is right for you, it may be an idea to define what yoga is or could be, and what the benefits and downfalls of the various interpretations might be. Before going any further, it's worth noting I'm not a yogi. I have taken part in some classes, I've known many yoga instructors, both casually and in my role as a gym owner, where we hosted some classes and events. I've advised participation in yoga classes to select clients, and elements taken from yoga teachings to others, which have proven extremely beneficial. But I've also advised temporarily stepping away from it for others. The problem with most advice on the benefits of yoga is it regularly comes from yoga instructors or die-hard participants. So what do you think the advice is going to be? Just know as we continue that I have no agenda here other than to ensure when looking at options for self-improvement and development that you have options. And by reviewing those options based on your needs, you're more likely to tap into the ones that offer you the greatest benefit. Okay, so to get to the bottom of what yoga really is, we should probably look at its origins. And for that, we must travel back some 5,000 years to a region on the border of northwest India and Pakistan, the Indus-Sarasvati civilization. The people of the Indus Valley believed in the transformative power of breathing, and many artifacts from the area contain the first documented yogic postures, from which the Indus Valley is widely considered to be the birthplace of yoga. Around 2000 BC, or BCE if you prefer, the area was populated by Aryans from Iran, who condensed and reworded the Indus-Sarasvati culture in their native language of Sanskrit. And it's from Sanskrit that we find the earliest known documentation of the word yoga, and the earliest lessons in breathing and the control of prana, which I'll come back to in a minute. Over the next few thousand years, the ancient breathing methods spread through India, China, and beyond. Ultimately, these techniques would evolve into the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. What's interesting about all of this is there's no mention in the Yoga Sutras of movement or poses. In other words, the earlier yoga was a science of holding still and building prana, I will explain that I promise, through breathing. Then developed into the eight-limbed system that was more a philosophy of living a better life through mind, body and spiritual awareness. And although one of these limbs is asana, which talks of exercise regime, historically this was simply seen as a method of preparing the body for meditation. It wasn't until the 20th century that yoga poses would be formed into the kind of aerobic dance or flows we currently associate with them. This isn't in any way to belittle the modern approaches, but rather to highlight the fact that if it's the moving, stretching, and general gymnastics of the discipline that concerns you, it's worth understanding that at its core, yoga is about breathing, self-connection, and control. Which is a good time to explain this word, Prana. It's a word that is still used extensively in the discussion of yoga. Directly translated, it means life force or vital energy. And in simplistic terms, it's a reference to atoms that make up all things, from the device you're watching this on, the seat you're possibly sitting on, the clothes you're wearing, to the body you inhabit. They're all made up of atoms, which equate to their energy or their prana. You might also have heard the term in its Chinese derivation of qi, which is essentially the same thing. The belief that the body contains channels that function like power lines connecting organs and tissues. Okay, so all well and good. But how does this help with your decision to include or ignore yoga as part of your personal development? When I'm working with my coaching clients, one of the things I will continually return to is their breathing. When I worked as a personal trainer, I was amazed at just how much difficulty people had controlling their own breath. Ask someone to focus on breathing in a specific pattern, out on the effort, in on the lower, and it's amazing how many people get it wrong. After all, it's something we just do. We don't have to think about it usually, but when we're trying to improve our health, fitness, body composition, etc., often one of our biggest hurdles is a fight with ourselves. How our internal systems and hormonal functions are working can be the difference between progression and stagnation. Have you ever noticed that when you're stressed, you occasionally have to take a deep breath for seemingly no reason? Most likely that's because when we are stressed, we unconsciously tend to hold our breath or take very shallow breaths. And given every cell in our body requires oxygen to function correctly, limiting the flow is limiting us. Do it frequently enough and those limitations become the norm. I could go much deeper into this topic, but the takeaway here is if you have difficulty controlling your breathing, if your lung capacity isn't serving you, if you're working insanely hard in the gym, you feel your diet is solid, yet the fat is stubbornly hanging on, particularly in the abdominal region, then you may want to spend time focusing on breathing techniques. And with over 5,000 years of history with breathing-centric practices, yoga could be the ideal starting point. Oh hey, if you're finding any of this interesting or helpful at all, would you mind stretching your thumb down to that like button and giving it a click?
That's it, done.
Yoga began to be a more widespread practice in the 1930s when celebrities of the day such as Charlie Chaplin and George Bernard Shaw began to show interest in the practice. But it wasn't until the 1980s when it began to be promoted as a form of exercise rather than a practice that it really took off. Since then, it's, like all things fitness related, become extremely commercialised. There are currently over 10,000 yoga instructors in the UK alone and over 300 million practitioners globally. It's an industry worth over $80 billion. And with the continual addition of new yoga studios, retreat centres, digital classes and so on, it continues to be one of the fastest growing industries in the world. I mention all of this in an aim to heighten your antenna prior to making any decisions to add yoga to your routine. It's a theme I continue to come back to. Not all services bound under one title are equal. Not all gyms are equal. Not all personal trainers are the same. And not all yoga practices are equal. Now, this is where I get a little out of my element because I'm not an expert in the different forms of yoga. But then again, even experts in the field are unlikely to be experts in all forms because, well, there are so many of them. Ranging from the more commonly thought of forms such as Ashtanga, Bikram, Hatha, and the like, through the more modern evolutions of power yoga, hot yoga, aerial yoga, acro yoga, and so on. And with so many options to choose from, which ones are worth considering? Anyone practicing or teaching any specific form is likely to wax lyrical about the benefits of their choices, why theirs is the purest, the most effective, or perhaps the most fun. But like everything I've mentioned in other videos, there's no best option in a broad sense. There's only choices that will benefit your current needs, and those will distract or hinder them. One of the main caveats I'll often give to the idea of the best of anything, regardless of how good something is on paper, if you don't follow through on it, then it will become either useless or detrimental. Meaning, even if there is an option that's perfect for your current needs, if you continually put it off, or you feel foolish doing it, or your focus becomes one of poor self-esteem or confidence, then not only will you not get the most out of it, but you're likely to develop a negativity for the practice, making it more difficult to reconnect with it at a future point, when it may have been more easily implemented. So, as with anything else, you will come to a better conclusion if you first look at yourself, rather than looking to the options and trying to make one of them fit. What are your current struggles? What is limiting you? What restrictions are you working within? Time, financial, family commitments, and so on. When you have a better handle on these things, only then can you make truly informed choices that will generate the most impactful benefits. Okay, let's discuss this briefly. How do you know what you need currently? This is the framework of my coaching technique when working with my one-to-one clients. There is a definitive hierarchy of needs when it comes to self-improvement on a physical level. However, every element is surrounded by breathing. So I'll suggest you start there. Do you frequently snore? Do you commonly breathe through your mouth, particularly when under stress? Think about when you exercise, go for a run, lift weights, or anything that challenges you. How in control of your breathing do you feel? And when it gets challenging, do you find yourself gulping down air rather than controlling things through your breath? Do you find that your endurance for anything physical is low? In other words, you have poor lung capacity. A good test for this is to simply hold your breath. Let's try it now and see if you can manage a minute quite comfortably. I'll do it with you. Take a long breath in through your nose and I'll start the timer when it's time to hold. If you find you give up in under a minute, that is a good sign that you would benefit from working on your breathing, though obviously there could be other factors at play here. Hereditary issues, previous surgery, other habits that require attention such as smoking or excessive drinking. And if you're extremely overweight, there could be physical restrictions that go beyond your breathing techniques. However, even if one or more of these factors are at play, developing better habits in conjunction with addressing any other elements is only going to accelerate your improvements. But with all that said, how are you getting on? If you managed it, but only just, and you're now completely out of breath, then don't consider this a box ticked, something to forget. Though what it does show is a strong willpower and determination to see something through. The truth is, unless this is something that you've been giving significant focus to over the years, or you're just lucky enough to have amazing genetics and natural body awareness, chances are this is an area you could benefit from working on. What about the poses, the movement, the acrobatics, and all the other elements that make the different styles of yoga unique? Too much of this, in my view, is marketing. The desire to stand out and be seen as different, unique, more advanced, or just to get noticed. After all, no publicity is bad publicity. So let's have a look at some of the modern adaptations of yoga that may fall into this category. SUP Yoga, or stand-up paddleboard yoga, is one of these practices that is a fairly logical adaptation. Instead of doing the practice near water or on beaches, why not make the water part of the practice? It's performed on oversized surfboards floating on water, though usually tethered in place within a harbour or similar. The creation of the practice is often credited to Rachel Brathen, known on Instagram as Yoga Girl. However, by her own admission, she did not technically invent the practice, though from what I can gather, she did come up with it on her own without knowing of its existence. However, when we look to the benefits of the practice over the more traditional forms of yoga, they're mostly credited to the physical elements. You're on an unstable surface, so it develops stabilizing muscles more effectively, and it clearly helps improve your overall balance. The other benefits are not unique to doing it on a board. Things like being outdoors, the calming sounds of the water, fresh air. These are true if you revert back to beach practice, or just doing it on a balcony or in your garden. Plus, it's not impossible to create an unstable surface anywhere. Stick a board on an inflatable mattress or a bouncy castle and watch how much harder it is to balance or stabilise, but without the worry of having to carry on the session wet. Understand though, I'm not belittling the practice. It clearly has many benefits, but there's no denying that one of those benefits is the marketability of the class. It looks different. It'll always look pleasant because it's practiced on still waters and so in good weather. And those that become accomplished at it can show off because it looks incredibly impressive. So faced with SUP yoga as a viable option, if you live near somewhere it takes place, which could include swimming pools, so it's not fully weather dependent, though some of those previously promoted benefits go out the window if that's the case, all I'd suggest is don't be lured by the novelty factor. Remember, yoga comes primarily from a focus on breathing and self-awareness. So shifting focus to more strength, stability and balance as a result of the primary draw of the adaptation is likely to detract from this core principle. If improved stability, however, proves to be one of your primary concerns, then clearly this is worthy of consideration. But perhaps it would be best considered in conjunction with other such disciplines, such as Pilates, gymnastics, tightrope walking, or just boring old work with a physiotherapist, or even a Swiss ball at home. By applying this logic to all such adaptations, it becomes easier to make more informed decisions. For example, hot yoga, often referred to as Bikram yoga, is an option that many intuitively feel come with many benefits. If your body's warmer, it's likely to be more supple, and so you can achieve more. In an extremely hot environment, it forces you to breathe harder, so you must be benefiting on the breathing front. And with endorsements from world-class sports people like Andy Murray, using it as part of their training, it must be good, right? But if you then consider that doing anything in extreme heat is going to cause you to fatigue quicker, you're instantly going to get less out of each session. By forcing pronounced breathing just to stay cool, that's not a great way to be focusing on technique. And the heat generated, by the time it penetrates the depths of your skin to reach the muscles, tendons and ligaments you're moving, is not going to have anything near the effect of simply moving the area with careful focus, something you're likely to have a lot less of due to the dehydration working in heat is promoting. However, once it does have an effect and you're suitably warmed up regardless, it has been known to cause people to overstretch because of the now increased flexibility and the heat masking the discomfort. When Andy Murray uses this in his practice, it is in part to acclimatise him to playing tennis in extreme heat, such as at the start of the season when the Australian Open is looming. And by being a pasty lad from Scotland myself, I know only too well how much a shock to the system it is when that big yellow thing in the sky makes an appearance. So it suits his needs, and he can combine the acclimatising with working on his movement, leaving more time available to practice his tennis strokes than if he were to work on those elements separately. As a quick side note about Bikram, the founder of the practice, Bikram Choudhury, was the subject of some pretty sensational scandals around 2017. Now, I'm not going to go into all the details here, feel free to look it up, and this doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the effectiveness of the practice itself, but it may well colour your views on it, given this was, after all, the person who created it. You can make these same evaluations for all options, from the added intensity of the stretches offered by aerial yoga versus the added complexity and how you may feel about the practice on a self-conscious level, the perceived freedom of nude yoga, to the amped up intensity of power yoga, and so on. In short, don't fall for the gimmicks. Rather, take the time to assess your needs first, then look at the options available to assist. To return to what many would consider the more traditional forms of modern yoga, there are still many to choose from. From discussing it with the experts I've encountered over the years, my personal feeling is if you're looking for a blend of breathing practices combined with the benefits of movement and flexibility, whilst feeling that you're getting a bit of a workout by expending energy, Ashtanga yoga is highly recommended. This also happens to be one of the ones I've tried. For beginners, it's useful as it usually involves more interactive adjustments from the instructor. So if you feel your form, posture and technique are key elements you want to keep an eye on, then this could be worth considering. Hatha yoga can often be used as a sort of catch-all term for various types of yoga, but When this is in the title, it's often meant for beginners, looking at more self-exploration within the session with less emphasis on pushing your body to do more. Yin yoga is a much slower style of yoga. Here, poses are held for extended periods of time, and it's very much focused on increasing circulation in the joints and improving flexibility. As such, it's worth considering as a complementary practice to go along with resistance training or martial arts training. I could go on listing options, suggesting who they might be suitable for, their benefits and their negatives, but ultimately it comes down to that one thing I mentioned earlier. What do you need right now to move forwards? And do any of these practices offer solutions to your current needs or frustrations? Though if they do, it's also worth being completely honest with yourself when considering, is this something you feel sufficiently drawn to that you will follow through with it consistently and with purpose? But keep in mind the beginnings of all of this. Yoga is, at its core, the practice of breathing. Regardless of the evolution of these practices through meditation, mindfulness, or the more recent adaptations of Wim Hof, the Iceman, who's taken a 12th century breathing technique called Tumo and repackaged it for mass consumption by promoting its powers of control over the body against the fiercest of elements. It's clear that breathing has power. An increased focus on how we breathe can have extremely positive effects. So, even if all you take away from this review on whether yoga is worth considering is that it's worth investing a little more time in your breathing techniques, then this has been worthwhile. Through both spiritual practices and scientific experiment, it appears there is such a thing as the perfect breath. This involves inhaling for about 5.5 seconds, then exhaling for a similar 5.5 seconds, totaling around 5.5 breaths per minute. And it's also true that mouth breathing has been shown to be toxic and is only there as an emergency backup measure for reasons I'll explore another time. Therefore, if you want to see improvements in your health, fitness and well-being, a good idea would be to shut your mouth and breathe slowly. If after all this though, you don't feel yoga is a worthwhile option for you, click here to see if working with a personal trainer may be worthwhile. Alternatively, hang on for future videos where I'll discuss more alternatives that may be worth considering.